I think he was very disappointed that Real Madrid, in the 1 year that they finally sell Cristiano Ronaldo, don't make a big effort to sign him. They didn't.
Dzień dobry, Paweł Wilkowicz, witam w Panorama Sky Bar w hotelu Marriott i zapraszam na najnowszy odcinek Sam na Sam. A dzisiaj moim gościem jest człowiek, który robi dużo hałasu razem z Juergenem Kloppem. Has Jurgen Klopp read the book?
He has.
He liked it?
He did.
Is he image conscious?
He says no, but of course
Everybody is.
he is. If you have a look at how his hair looked before he went to Dortmund and how his...
You know, but with the hair it's just time, so...
Yeah, but I think he quite cares, yeah. Especially I think in the Premier League, because...
you mean like that they were reborn?
Rejuvenated.
Okay.
Yes. I think the attention on managers, especially in the Premier League, is so big because there is no one else really talking from the club ever. You only see the manager, maybe one or two players, but really it's the manager, that you almost are forced into projecting a certain image because your fans almost demand it from you. They want you to be cool and in control and charming and exciting and convincing because they want to follow you, and I think he understands that actually. He came to Liverpool and they all sat down with him, like the press officer and other people, and they said, okay, what are we doing now? And he said to them, look, you know what you're doing. I'm happy to trust you. You tell me how the media works here. You know who the right people to speak to, etc. And I think he's very good at believing in the confidence and competence of others and not trying to do absolutely everything the whole time. They will ask him, and the owners of Liverpool told me that there's a temptation to ask him about everything. You know, what does the toilet look like in the new training center? Do you want it with a red or white seat? I'm exaggerating slightly, but only slightly. I think he doesn't really know how to say I don't care, but they are getting better, the club, not asking him too many
restraining
questions.
themselves.
Yes.
Okay, I asked if he read it because there was no special interview for the book. Yeah, you used your interviews from the pre, but he accepted the fact that the book is being written. Yeah,
he had not much of a choice because he couldn't stop me. But of course, he could have killed it.
People that certainly know him and would not talk to you if he.
Exactly. So when I signed a deal to do the book, I approached him and his manager and I said, look, I'm doing this book. Can I rely on you having some input and helping me? And they said, really sorry, but we only will contribute to a book actively once Jurgen is no longer on the bench. So that could take 20 years. A little bit too long for me to wait. But they said, we are willing to help you when it comes to access to all the important people in his family, former teammates, former people he worked with at Dortmund, and even in Liverpool as a club. They were hugely open and helpful. And you know, Mike Gordon, for example, FSG, one of the owners, he had never spoken to anyone about Jurgen before. And he was very, very nice to me. Even he said afterwards, you can call me anytime because Jurgen Klopp is my favorite subject.
Is he your favorite subject as well now?
I think he is quite emblematic of something different in modern football and of a change. I think that's been very positive. The change is that you no longer have to have been a super talented footballer yourself to be taken seriously as a manager. And this is a relatively new development. There are a few before him. Mourinho was a similar case. But in Germany, he is the guy that broke the mold. He was the first guy, out of nowhere really, who suddenly was seen as smart enough, competent enough to explain football to 80 million people on German television with Franz Beckenbauer, even though he was only, in inverted commas, a Mainz coach and had never played in the Bundesliga. And I think that is a big message for everyone of us.
And Beckenbauer didn't like him from the very beginning. I mean,
Beckenbauer thought, you know, what am I doing with this guy? And even Paul Breitner, in the very first TV talk show that Klopp did in 2001, he was with Ralf Rangnick, who was at Ulm at the time, and Klopp, who was at Mainz, both in the second division. But people were beginning to see that these guys are doing something very special, so they put him in a talk show with Paul Breitner. But Paul Breitner said to the producers, I'm not sitting with these guys, second Bundesliga coaches who never played football at my level, what am I doing here? But in the course of the show, they actually were beginning to dominate the conversation because their ideas were a little bit more advanced. I think it helped Dortmund a lot. I think he had shown on the pitch as a manager with Mainz that he could do something very special, because getting Mainz promoted to Bundesliga was a miracle. If you think about their history, it had never been done before. They had very little money, no real right to be in the conversation. Then he managed to stay up for 2 years, so he had already done a lot. But I think for Dortmund then say, okay, we want you now to come and rebuild our club and regenerate our team's footballing style and all these things, was only possible because he had that large persona, courtesy of his TV shows. It's quite indicative, because even when Klopp took the job to be the TV expert in 2005 for the Confed Cup, first as a trial really, and then the World Cup, he just liked the idea of having tickets, free tickets from television to go to the World Cup. That's great, you know, I can see the games.
No, at the World Cup, he already seemed like, you know, at home in TV studio.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah. But there's some funny stories and funny recollections from the people who work with him about the stuff that went on behind the scenes. How sometimes he would get angry and smash a wall and loses his temper a little bit.
In the studio?
In the studio, yeah.
But as a guest?
No, as an expert, but off air.
Okay.
But it was,
or
yeah, I don't know exactly. I think mostly when the technique, when technical stuff didn't work, which, as you know, happens quite often in television.
Yeah.
It was really him who came up with the idea of working with a kind of a stop motion picture, and then you draw on it. I mean, now it's the standard, but in Germany at the time, very few people did it. They would rather talk about general stuff, you know, psychology. This team is not motivated, this team are arrogant, this team are, they're afraid. But he actually took football down to a much more analytical, factual level. He says, okay, you have probably as a viewer have felt why this game is not going well for this team, but I will now show you, and very, very quickly, and in a language that 80 million can understand, not just the football fans, but also the housewife and also the guy who only watches football every few years when he watches Germany play the World Cup. They all got it, and he made it with fun and with humor and with charm, so it was the perfect package. The one thing he immediately realized is, you know, this is great. If I can do it on television, why don't I do it in the dressing room? So they started doing the same thing with video analysis in the dressing room at a time when it was still completely new and no one was doing that, you know, to have a TV in the dressing room and all the stuff. Why do we need a TV? We have the board, you know, with the magnets.
Yeah. I remember Robert Lewandowski told me that at the beginning in Dortmund he had it very tough because he didn't understand Klopp. I mean, emotionally. And they were already in the Champions League when all this ice were melted because he went to Klopp and said, I'm angry, I don't know what you want from me, you know, I don't feel at home.
He realized that you cannot make all players happy all the time, that it's impossible. And if you spend a lot of time with the unhappy players, then perhaps your time would be better spent to deal with the players that are playing and improving them. Of course, you can give advice, you can give a bit of encouragement, but I think his way of motivating is showing those who don't play the love and attention that he does show to those who are playing. So players want to be in that this situation. And you can see it even sometimes after games where he uses his body to send messages. You know, one guy's get a big hug, the other guys just get like a clap. Even without saying much, I think he shows you if you were really happy, if he was really happy with you, or if perhaps you could have done better. And it's quite a smart thing to do, because it creates these bonds that are very emotional and go deeper than words. A lot of managers are good with words, but then don't actually follow through. And we've seen, I think, some very prominent examples where They're very complimentary of certain players. For example, Guardiola is a great example at Bayern, how he said, I love this guy, I love that guy, this guy's the best guy. And then 2 weeks later,
top Spieler.
He was gone, you know. He said, I want 1,000 Dantes, but then the one Dante was gone. So Klopp would never say that, but I think he communicates in a more kind of a visceral level.
Do you think these finals hurt him a lot?
He has this amazing ability to not dwell on defeats. Of course, he has now lost quite a lot of finals, and I'm sure it's hugely annoying to him, but every time it happened, he somehow managed to turn it into a positive and into keeping his players motivated. I mean, if you think what happened to Liverpool last year, they go to the Champions League final, and they're having the season of their lives in the Champions League, and then the final, completely everything that can go wrong goes wrong with the goalkeeper, with Salah. And I think it'd be very difficult then to go back and say, okay, let's start again. But somehow it didn't seem to have had any negative mental impact. And I think that's because of him, because he doesn't show any negative mental impact. He might not admit to it, but if you could tell him that, you know, every year you can have those amazing experiences that you had in those games against Manchester City, for example, and the crowd and people having so much fun in the whole of Liverpool. You might not win anything, but you will generate all those feelings all the time. He will not maybe admit to it publicly, but I think he would say, it's not a bad deal. Because I think it's almost more important to him than the results.
To feel the energy.
Yes, yes.
It was Klopp who said, like, we have bow and arrows and Bayern has a bazooka, but apparently something happened with the bazooka. Or do you think...
I mean, once or twice the arrow can beat the bazooka, but not in the long run.
And do you think arrow will beat bazooka this season? Do you think Bayern's ailing is going to end soon? Or?
The problem is, I think, right now, that Bayern as a team don't fully believe that Kovac has all the answers. And he has done some good stuff when it comes to fitness and the basics of defending. But then when you come up against a team who understand that the flanks are really strong, so we close down the flanks, and then what's next? You know, what is our plan B? Do we have any other ideas? And if then nothing comes from the sideline, today's modern player expects the manager to be active and have a solution, at least an idea. And so far what I've been hearing from the dressing room is that he's been a little bit low on creative ideas, and it's a dangerous position to be in, because it doesn't mean that next week or in 2 months he might not suddenly have better ideas and will help the team. But if the team stop believing that this guy helps us to achieve and start thinking what would happen if another guy would come in, would he help us more to have solutions in attack? He needs to not just have good results, but he needs to convince the players that he helps them to perform. There's still some ground to be made up in that respect.
Because you're also the author of the book Reboot, about like revival of German football. And I wonder, do you see the need to make another, maybe not a reboot, but soft restart? Or?
I don't think things are that bad. I think that there is improvement to be made, of course, when it comes to developing.
Because there's a lot of pessimism in the coverage of German football. A
but
lot.
That's
like we are second tier now.
But that is Germany.
We are arrogant.
But that's just how we do things. We are always unhappy. Going into any World Cup, we think it's going to be pretty bad. The fact that it was actually bad is
it's helping this trend. Okay.
Of course, just produce more angst. But no, look, I mean, when I wrote the book just after Germany had won the World Cup, I spoke to a lot of people in the youth development, and they all said, yeah, we made some improvements relative to the past, but we still need to do a lot more better. So there was not a sense that, okay, that's it, we've finally done our work, and
because
now it's
if
all
you're
going to be
like
fine.
Buying kicker, you see, oh, the problem with youth coaching, the problem with youth coaching. So you see, come here and see how the problem with youth coaching looks like.
It's a very German way of looking at things. And it's a good way, because it forces you to keep working and to say, okay, we still need to do better.
I would say like the biggest achievement of German football culture is being innovative in times of prosperity. That's what we were talking.
I agree. And I think when you look at a national team, yes, of course, there's some weaknesses. There's no striker. There's no fullbacks.
That's my question.
But
how? Okay, go.
But it's still a pretty good team. We're not nearly as bad as it was 20 years ago or 18 years ago.
So you think Löw is
safe for the moment, partly by default, because there are no big names available, partly because I think the dressing room, unlike Bayern, still believes in him and still thinks that he knows what he's doing and will help us to perform. So,
but he has shown against France that he wants to change the guard
and learn from mistakes, and I think that's enough for people to say, okay, you know what, we still trust you. Or I think Löw maybe will be a bit more ruthless and a bit less trusting in his old
less sentimental
performers, less sentimental. That's a great way of putting it.
German football now has some its image is quite actually worse than the actual state of things, because like when you look at Ballon d'Or nominations, nobody from Bayern, nobody from Germany. It's quite harsh actually.
Yeah, I mean, there's a wider problem. The wider problem, and Bayern experienced that when they won the Champions League, when everyone thought, okay, now Ribéry or Neuer are going to win the Neuer in 2014, Ribéry in 2013.
Yeah, at least they were on the podium, yeah? Like Bayern was the safest way to get on the podium behind Barcelona
but
and Real
not as
Madrid.
a winner, because of the Messi, Ronaldo duopoly. And now in recent years, because of the Premier League attracting once again some of the best players. And it's difficult, I think, for Bayern and Germany players to have the visibility unless they win the big trophies. In Juventus, before they bought Ronaldo, had the same problem. You know, Juventus, the Italians are not there as a national team. Juventus play really well, have great players, but don't win the Champions League. People just kind of go, doesn't really matter. I think Bayern now, if you would ask them, do you want to sign Cristiano Ronaldo? I think they weren't sure. It's like, yeah, the advertising is great and the goals is great, the attention is great. And I'm not talking about his legal problems with the rape allegations. I'm talking about all the other stuff.
Germany probably is not the worst at rest.
No, but this is pretty bad. Anyway, I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying, do you want such a big guy in the dressing room? I think Bayern would think, no, it's probably not good for us.
Robert will be that happy with it. But will you recommend him to stay and try 1, 2, 3 more years, or may use this opportunity of the big rebuilding of the team? And
I think he was very disappointed that Real Madrid, in the 1 year that they finally sell Cristiano Ronaldo, don't make a big effort to sign him. They didn't. They asked, but it was not the whole. You know, Real Madrid, if they want a player,
they have a real
make
drive.
It happen.
Yeah, sure.
And they didn't. And I think that was a disappointment to him. He unfortunately, or you can say fortunately, is in a price bracket where only 3 or 4, maybe 5 clubs in the world can afford him. So if those...
It's an asset, but it's also...
Correct. So if those 4 or 5 clubs don't need a big centre forward in that specific year, there's not much he can do. The question is, will Bayern change their mind on him? And I think his performances last year, for the first time, got Bayern thinking a little bit, because he didn't seem to be 100% committed to Bayern. He says Bayern weren't committed to him, but I think Bayern also felt that he wasn't really committed to them, and it was a bit of an unhappy
Some
marriage.
love lost.
Correct. But they're still married, they're still there. Divorce is very expensive.